You're listening to the Greeks Gridiron. Now here's your host, Ethan Haristadoulou.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to the Greeks Gridiron. I am Ethan Haristadoulou, and it is that time once again, going into week number 15 now, off the heels of a pretty bonkers ending to a Monday Night Football matchup. We are diving into power rankings, going through the tier list from worst to first, 32 to 1. I invite you all to comment down below. I would love to hear from you all. Share your thoughts on this past weekend's games. Let me hear your rankings. If it's not a 32 to 1 list, give me your top 10, give me your top 5, give me your top 3. I would love to hear from you all. But diving in, as we always do, we're going to start with the number 1 overall selections and work our way up to the top, beginning at the very bottom. We had a lot of shuffling going on the 2 bottom tiers this week. At number 32, the Giants sitting at 2-11, the Raiders right in front of them at 31. Patriots fall to 30 during their bye week because of just some movement going on around them. Titans at 29, Jaguars are at 28, and the Jets, round out the category at number 27. So here's the deal. The Giants, both New York teams, kind of in a state of a mess, I guess you could say. But the Giants specifically right now we'll focus on. Drew Lock, 21 of 49, team's leading rusher. The defense, for what it's worth, kept the game somewhat close against that Saints team. But man, oh man, is this a team, in my opinion, one of the most ready franchises for some change that we have seen in quite some time. I would say about 3 years too long into the Daniel Jones era at the very least. I would assume that we're going to see potentially a head coaching change at the end of the season. I know that there's potential that maybe Brian Daboll does stick around. I'll be very curious to see what happens with this franchise, but as each and every single week goes by, it becomes more and more clear this team needs that reset, and we're finally going to get it for the Giants. And I just hope that this is maybe the start of getting back to some of their former glory from even just as recently as the 2000s or maybe back into the 80s. The Raiders right above them at 2-11. I'm glad to hear that Aiden O'Connell is okay. Just a bone bruise. Pretty crazy considering he got put in an air cast and carted off to the field. I understand. Better be safe than sorry, but that just crazy for that to wind up being the end result there. I'm assuming a pretty serious bone bruise for just how all of that shook out on the actual football field. Sincere McCormick was a nice little surprise for the Raiders, a team that has not really been able to run the football this season, averaging 5.2 yards per attempt, nearly racking up 80 yards on the night. It was a bit of a game in the first half. I will give the Raiders credit for at least that very first half, keeping things close, but ultimately with the injury at quarterback and just that second half as a whole was a bit of a mess, mustering up just 3 points the rest of the way. Really unfortunate that this is the way the Raiders season is going here, but another one of those franchises that feels like it's probably poised for a bit of a reset this offseason as well. I'll be curious to see if Antonio Pierce is sticking around. He is still the head coach as far as I know at this current moment of recording, so whether that changes or not, we'll find out. But 2-11, both them and the Giants, very much quarterback needy teams that need to find that franchise guy and move forward from the last 3, 4, 5 years or so, I would say. The Patriots sitting at 3-10 did not participate this week on a bye. Did move down though, just because the Jaguars managed to pull off a pretty ugly but wild 10-6 victory over the Tennessee Titans. Now that the Titans and the Jaguars both have wins over the Patriots and the Jaguars were able to leapfrog the Titans this past week, I felt right to maybe move those teams and reorganize them a bit to reflect all of that. The Titans at 29, sitting at 3-10. As I said going into this game here, the AFC South is a weird division in that the better team tends to always play down to their opponent. It does not matter where these teams are. And in this situation here, the Titans had a better record coming into this matchup here. So the better team did play down to the lesser team in this matchup here. And I mean, you saw it front and center through the duration of this football game. It's never pretty losing a game 10-6 here, but you saw the 2 interceptions in the first half. You had no points, a turnover on downs at the 2-yard line, then a field goal and 2 more turnover on downs in the second half as well. I mean, that game was just a prime example of where the Titans are at this current stage right now. I'll be looking forward to seeing how this team evolves going through this offseason. There's plenty of things to be excited for, but this was a really tough season to watch the Titans go through in like a post Derrick Henry and even kind of post Ryan Tannehill era as well, and Will Levis type experiment here. There's thankfully some dudes on that defensive front on the defensive side of the ball. And I mean, I will say that I think like Tony Pollard is still a guy that'll be worth having around for the next few years as this team tries to retool itself, but there's a lot that needs work in Tennessee. Jaguars at 3-10. You got the win, yes, and, Doug Peterson saves his job, I guess, for another week here. I'm kind of still surprised he's still around, to be completely honest with you. Like, I don't blame him for the situation there, but even when Trevor Lawrence was playing, things were not going well, and injuries just have not really helped the situation. But with this win here, you just hurt draft position, so yeah, you get a win, but it kind of feels like a loss at the same time. The Jets sitting at 3-10. Not even Aaron Rodgers' first 300-yard performance since December 12th of 2021 against Chicago could help this Jets team find a way to win. They let the game get tied up and go into overtime, and then they never saw the football again as they let Tua march right down the field and put up the 6 points needed to win that football game. It was like Garrett Wilson said in postgame, this is just a team that feels like it has a gene for losing. Whatever the reason may be, it's just the Jets find incredible ways to lose football games every single week, and that just does not seem to change no matter the year. This is another team I'm really looking forward to seeing what happens, because we've seen this team basically ripped apart and dismantled during the middle of the season, coaching staff and front office wise, and the roster is basically next at this point here. Moving into the struggle bus category, the teams that are probably not picking number one, but they're still possibly top 10, if not like 11 or 12. The Browns sit at number 26. The Bears are at 25. The Saints at 24. Panthers at 23. The Cowboys are at 22 following that Monday night loss to the Bengals. And then the Bengals right above them sitting at number 21. So the Browns, another week, another tough loss. This time around, not so lucky against the Steelers. 3 turnovers will lose you a football game, especially in the AFC North of all divisions. You cannot really get away with winning football games that way. You had a couple of interceptions from Jameis Winston again. You also had a fumble that was lost as well in the game. It feels like the fans might be starting to kind of get over the whole Winston aura and just, the silliness and wackiness with all the interceptions. And it feels like with every interception that goes by, this team, or the fans rather, seem to be more and more over just the current situation that they're in. And this is a team that, because the Deshaun Watson situation is still looming over them, I have genuinely no idea where this Browns franchise goes from here, because you still have an unbelievable amount of money owed to Watson that Cleveland is going to have to eat one way or another. And it almost feels like with every loss that the Browns go through right now, it almost feels like it might just be better to cut your losses, cut him, and move on. Like, yeah, it's going to be an astronomical amount of dead cap, and it's money you can't really move around or get around of. It'll be an ugly 2 years, but at least you can kind of rid your hands of the Deshaun Watson contract in one way and just kind of start to move forward in some capacity. But how does it benefit you keeping him on the roster? 3 years now into this experiment, and it has just been awful. And where the Browns are currently, just with the state of this roster and the quarterback play that they're getting, it feels like this is a team that's going to be looking to retool this offseason. The Bears above them at 4-9 at number 25. No interim head coach boost for the Bears, as they basically just got slaughtered by the 49ers. It got really ugly really quickly, and this is another team that is just, again, waiting for the change this offseason, a new head coach, someone to work alongside Ryan Poles to help devise an offense that can take advantage of the skill set that Caleb Williams and a lot of the guys that have been brought to this roster, especially on the offensive side, to that next level. And I Bears fans, I want you to know that I really hope that this offseason with Caleb Williams in tow at the quarterback spot can finally be the page that is turned that leads to a better story than what we've been seeing from Chicago for basically the majority of my life. I guess I could, to put it simply, and I'm 29 years old right now, so I would like to see the Bears finally turn that page and finish the story of mediocre to semi-average quarterback play that they've gotten at certain stints during the time that I've been a football fan myself. Hopefully things start to look brighter in a few weeks, but unfortunately it feels like, I thought maybe there was a chance we could get a bit of a boost from that, firing of Eberflus, but this is a team that just, they need the offseason bad. And the Saints at 5-8, sitting at number 24, Derek Carr. It sounds like there's some outside chance he could play. He's not going to the IR. I kind of assumed he was just going to be lost to the season. So at least for now, it's going to be Jake Haener or Spencer Rattler. But this is unfortunate for the Saints because honestly, the Derek Carr injury just kind of this encapsulates what has been a season of just injuries. And finally, it's not even the first time Derek Carr's been hurt this year. So it's like, the injury bug bit the Saints early and just never let go. And honestly, it seems like it invited some friends along to the party as well and let them know just how good the going was over there in New Orleans. It's actually pretty crazy. This was a team that those first 2 weeks of the year looked like they might be one of the best teams in the NFL, the way that they were dumping 40 points regularly. But it's been a long season since then, and I'm assuming this is a potential moving on of the Derek Carr era as well now at this point. If he does play again this season, I'll be interested to see how well he does, but from what I've gathered, there's a lot of conversation at least that is basically, speculating, was that the last you will see of Derek Carr in a New Orleans Saints uniform? There is a possibility that they can get out of the contract this year if they wanted to, so we'll see, but at this point here, this is another team that I myself personally have been kind of ready for the reset as well. The Panthers at 3-10. We can finally start looking at some positives here. I feel like it's been a really negative list to this point here, but the bottom of the league is just the bottom of the league right now. The Panthers at 3-10, I want to put some respect on Carolina's name. Their last 3 losses, all decided by a singular possession. Prior to this Eagle game, the 2 games prior to that, which included a game against the Chiefs, both 3-point losses, and then this one here, a 5-point loss, if I'm doing the math correctly, 6-point loss, I don't know, something like that, 5-6 points. A possession loss to the Eagles and a very tight game against the Chiefs over the last 2 of 3 games that they've played here. This Panthers team seems like they may be figuring it out. They're obviously still a ways away from getting to where they need to be, but Bryce Young has showed some steady improvement since getting benched and coming back. The defense is even coming to life a little bit as well. That pass rush especially, DJ Wonnum's been really big for them. So exciting stuff to say the least, as far as just slight improvements here and there with the Panthers, and to see them hanging around in games that most people are writing them off and the books are putting them at double-digit underdogs, to see them losing by maybe just 3 to 5 or 6 points in a game. Something is working over there, so I'm looking forward to seeing if that actually turns into something positive for them down the line. Cowboys the Cowboys, man, at 22 here. Blocked punt. Dallas player touches it. And then Cincinnati recovers. That is a play I have personally never seen. And as it was unfolding, I'm looking there and just going, is this Cincinnati's ball? And sure enough, official comes out, lets everyone know, because Amani Oruwariye or someone touched the football after the block initially happened, and because of that, once the Cincinnati Bengals scooped it up, it was their ball. I have never seen a blocked punt be a net positive for the team that the punt was blocked for, but somehow the Dallas Cowboys made it a net positive for their opponent, and I feel like that kind of sums up this Cowboys season in a nutshell. And then literally 4 plays later, I think 3 or 4, something like that, Jamar Chase is going for 6, putting you down, and ultimately costing you the football game. And I think Micah Parsons on the sideline, just the literal, if you could read his lips, oh my God, like how is this happening? Kind of fit, like, yeah. I mean, visibly distraught by Micah Parsons, him walking off the field, very unhappy at the end of the game as well. Like, I get it, especially for someone like him who seems just uber competitive, one of the best at his positions. You can see the literal frustration of what's going on there, because this Cowboys season has been a mess. So 5-8 at number 22. I guess it could be worse, but that was a crazy way to watch the Dallas Cowboys go down. The Bengals right above them, though. Jamar Chase, a monster on Monday night. That graphic that they were showing, but coming into this game, he was averaging like 7 receptions a game, I think, for over 136 yards, and he had like 3 touchdowns or something like that in his previous Monday night performances. And then tonight, as I'm recording, but you all will be seeing this in the morning, 14 receptions, 177 yards, a couple of touchdowns to go with it as well. Joe Burrow, once again, 370 yards, just a yard shy. He had 3 touchdowns and a pick. This Bengals team, if the defense could have just been better this season, would have been awesome to watch in the playoffs and just in the AFC playoff hunt. But unfortunately, that defense really needs some reworking this offseason. Clearly, Joe Burrow is literally playing at an MVP level, and he's not even going to sniff the playoffs at this point here, sitting at 5-8. There's no way. They would literally need to win out and have a handful of teams practically lose out for them to be able to sneak into the playoffs. But it's unfortunate because Joe Burrow is playing as good, if not better, than just about everyone at the quarterback spot this season. That isn't maybe like Jared Goff and Josh Allen. Those are like the two maybe exceptions you could bring up, and he has a case that he's on par with just the way they've been playing, with how good he's been throwing the football in spite of the current situation he's dealing with. Moving into the Jeff Fisher category, those teams just around 500, maybe just on the outside the playoffs looking in. At the number 20 spot, we have the Indianapolis Colts at 6-7, the Dolphins sitting at 19, the 49ers at 18, the Cardinals at 17, Falcons at 16, and the Rams at number 15. Colts dropped a spot just because a team in the Dolphins, I should say, just some other team. The Dolphins leapfrogged them here, but that's the only reason why. The Dolphins at 6-7, they need a lot to go their way if they want to potentially sneak into the playoffs. This is another team that winning out is pretty much necessary. If they're not finishing 10-7 and a few other things breaking their way, there's probably no way they're making the playoffs right now, which is really unfortunate because a lot of these teams in this category are maybe just good enough to be like a 7 seed, but the way the playoffs look at this current moment, and granted there's a month of football left, that could change. Everyone is basically 8-5 or better, minus the Buccaneers, but they're a division winner, division leader at this current moment right now. So a lot of these teams not only need to win and win a lot, they also need a lot of these other teams to be losing as well. The playoff picture is very top heavy right now, where there's a lot of teams with some good records, and it's one of those things where going 9-8 or 10-7 could potentially have you on the outside looking in. Potentially, emphasis on that, but more than likely, it feels like this season 9-8's probably not getting you into the playoffs. The Dolphins, though, needing a lot to break their way. They had to get this win against the Jets, and they did get it done, so big credit to them. No real ability to run the football against this Jets defensive front. It was basically Tua Tagovailoa saving the day for the team, ripping off 330 yards through the air with his arm, couple of touchdowns, including the game winner in overtime. Jonnu Smith coming up big in overtime for them, just making play after play after play to ultimately help cap off the game-winning drive. I like the direction the Dolphins are trending in right now. The defense is coming to life a little bit. We've seen some successful runs to the pass rush, and the offense is what it is. A team that has Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, Tua as good as just about any quarterback in the NFL with the way he plays. As long as he's on schedule doing his thing, this offense hums. And whether they can run the football or not, Tua has definitely proven his worth, in my opinion, this season with the time he missed and what this Dolphins team looks like versus when he's actually on the football field. So as long as he's doing his thing, the Dolphins are in the mix. Again, They need a lot to break their way. They got to win a lot of football games as well over the next month, but they have a shot. The 49ers at 6-7, much needed win over a down and out opponent like in the Chicago Bears. Just the way they have looked, this was a game that you were supposed to go in and win. I wasn't sure if they were going to go in and beat them down like that, but they definitely need to go in and win. But I'm still kind of worried about what's going on in San Fran in spite of that victory. I mean, you have reporters asking about the potential of maybe Kyle Shanahan and a team going out to trade for him that would maybe want an improvement at head coach. And then, of course, we have Deebo Samuel, who's tweeting that he's not seeing the ball enough and he's not having a down year. But I believe if I check the numbers correctly, he's like second in targets, touches, something like that. So the injuries on top of that as well. It's just been a very tough season for San Francisco, and the noise isn't even quieting down following a win over the Bears, as dominant as it was. So I'm glad that the 49ers won. They're another team with a long road ahead of them. Thankfully, it's a little bit tight in the NFC West, but the Seahawks are doing their absolute best to try to peel away and keep that lead with the win that they had over the Cardinals this past weekend. So we'll see what happens here, but 49ers in a really tough spot right now, even coming off of a win. Cardinals, I could basically say the same, but this is a tough loss for them this week. Arizona has now dropped 3 straight after looking like a potential surprise in a division winner at that, at 6-4, now sitting at 6-7. The big issue right now, and I hate to throw it on just one player, but unfortunately, the 5 interceptions that Kyler Murray has had over the last 3 weeks has been damning and is honestly a big part of why this team is 0-3 in these last 3 weeks here. Couple of interceptions in this game, couple of interceptions last week as well. A lot of those, especially last week, could be considered difference makers in why you didn't come out winning this football game. And then even in the week prior to that, the initial first loss you had against the Seattle Seahawks, that pick 6 ended up being devastating for the team. So the way I see it right now, Kyler Murray's got to clean up some of those mistakes, and if he does, maybe we get Arizona back into the thick of things, but they're trending in the wrong direction right now, and at this point, they're going on nearly a potential month without wins. Thankfully, they have a bounce-back opportunity in the afternoon window against the Patriots this week, so hopefully they can bounce back there. Falcons sitting at number 16, continuing to slip here, and I've got to, this one is not my idea, but I love the idea. A coworker of mine brought it up to me. There is a really good argument to be made, and I'll shout him out, Travis Thomas, because he hit this to me, and I was not ready for it, and then when he laid it out to me, I was like, okay, maybe I see what you're saying. Kirk Cousins has 8 interceptions and 0 touchdowns in the last 4 games that he has played. Something is wrong. Whether he is regressing, whether maybe that Achilles injury was never really healed to begin with, and maybe it's starting, the wear and tear of the season is starting to wear down on him. Whatever it may be, something is wrong with Kirk Cousins right now and the way he is operating that offense. On top of that, you look at their schedule. At the Raiders, home with the Giants, at Commanders, home with the Panthers. I understand that the Falcons are in the playoff hunt still, technically speaking. You're obviously just 1 game behind. You literally need a win and the Buccaneers to lose, and you're right back in the division lead. But can you really sit here and tell me that you think Kirk Cousins is going to lead this team to the playoffs based off the last month of play that he has put on tape? Last month, 4 games now we've gone where he has not thrown a touchdown and he's only thrown interceptions. With the Raiders, Giants, Commanders, and Panthers, the way I see it, if Michael Penix is the guy that you thought he potentially could be, and you drafted him, number 8 overall, if there was ever a slate of games that you would want to get him in and see what you have with him, and also potentially even make a run to the playoffs still, if things break your way, that is probably the easiest group you could have asked for, like minus the Commanders, obviously being a playoff team. And even the Commanders have shown us as of late, they're not necessarily perfect themselves. They have vulnerabilities. They are a team that is a bit overachieving in the current state that they're in. Michael Penix getting the start next week and playing out these last 4 games, is a very intriguing idea, in my opinion. And I'm honestly kind of on board at this point here. And I was somebody who was thrilled about Kirk Cousins going to Atlanta. I was hammering the table about it prior to him going there. I wanted to see him in Atlanta. And it's looked good at certain points, but this is a what have you done for me lately type of league, and sometimes unfairly, even as recently as just in the last month alone. And 8 interceptions and not a single touchdown has not been good. This offense feels like it's sputtering and just it's not pretty. And again, your schedule with a Raiders team that is going to be working through their, I guess, third string quarterback next week, coupled with a Giants team that can't seem to buy a win if they tried. You have a Panthers team that, for what it's worth, we praised a little bit on the rise, but is still a Panthers team with 3 wins. And then the Commanders, who have been prone to slipping up this season. You have 4 winnable games in front of you. And whether it's Kirk Cousins or Michael Penix, I think your odds are basically the same at this point with the way Cousins has been playing. So maybe see what the rookies got, give him the opportunity. Worst case, you miss out on the playoffs, but I don't really think you could sit here at the end of the season if you miss the playoffs going, man, if we kept Cousins in, he was going to turn those interceptions around eventually. And maybe he does. Maybe he smacks me in the mouth and I'm totally wrong, but the last month of play makes it really, really hard to want to sit here and say, he'll turn it around the last month or so. The Rams right above them at number 15, sitting at 7-6. Methodical efficiency was the name of the game for Sean McVay and this Rams team. 11 for 15 on third downs. You got 5 touchdowns from the offense altogether, not including the blocked punt that got you 6 points on the same play. And then, of course, you had a field goal as well. And then the defensive side of things, that blocked punt A, or I guess that's special teams technically, but then you also had the 3-and-out to start the half, which allowed you to eventually go ahead 31-14 in that game against the Bills. You want to talk about difference-making plays and just difference-making situations. To shut down Buffalo coming out of halftime in that 3-and-out the way the Rams did was monumental for them being able to come away with a victory because the Bills got so hot in the second half. But Sean McVay put on an absolute masterclass of offensive play calling in this game here, from what Matthew Stafford was doing to Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp, who have just been like blessings for Matthew Stafford since they've come back for this offense altogether. We're seeing improvements on the offensive line as well. This Rams team, sitting at 7-6, is in the hunt. They need some things to break their way if they want to get back into the actual playoff picture, but they're as close as you're going to get as far as in the hunt is concerned, because everyone else behind them is like 6 or 7 or worse. The Rams are just on the outside looking in, and they have got to keep winning. And I almost feel like at this point, you get that win over the Bills, they've got to be feeling really good right now. If they get hot at the right time, this is a team that could make a run with Matthew Stafford in that offense. I honestly believe that. The defense is a little bit young and inexperienced for me, but crazier things have happened in this league. Moving into the playoff hopefuls, the Super Bowl contenders, as always, a reminder, we need to have 7 AFC teams, 7 NFC teams, a division winner from all 8 divisions, and of course the wildcard teams as well for the remaining 3 in each conference here. At number 14, and to be honest with you all, there was no movement in this category here. This is the exact same setup I had last week, and I feel pretty good about it. At number 14, the Buccaneers. At 13, the Seahawks. At 14, the Texans obviously didn't play this week. Chargers at 11. We'll get into that. Injuries, man. Broncos at number 10. Commanders at number 9. Ravens at number 8. Those 3 teams obviously not playing this week. And then the Packers rounding out the group at number 7. So the Buccaneers snatching the division away from Atlanta like I predicted during my predictions for the week here. This is their division to lose now, and you can't really afford to lose another game and let Atlanta catch back up because Atlanta did sweep them. So even if you fall back a game and they win and they tie up the records and it's 7-7, like hypothetically next week, if they drop a game and Atlanta wins, you're right back to being second in the division here. So they've got to keep winning. Baker Mayfield is a gunslinger. to the absolute max, and I love watching it. It does scare me at times when I'm picking Tampa Bay to watch him play the way he does, but I really enjoy it. 3 touchdowns, couple of picks, but he's one of those guys that, like, I could see Baker Mayfield throwing 4 interceptions and it just not phasing him because he's like, all right, next drive. And like he has that just that short-term memory where he just completely moves on and keeps on going. He's a gamer, and I love watching it. And this offense, being able to run the football as effectively as they have as well, has been such a boon for them this year. So I'm excited to see Tampa Bay back in the pole position of the NFC South. And again, it's their division to lose now. They got to hang on to it. And the same can be said for the Seahawks right above them, sitting at 8-5. The NFC West is theirs, and they have a pretty good hold on it right now. Zach Charbonnet came in for them this week, absolutely ran wild, nearing 150 yards with a couple of touchdowns. Defense continues to get healthier each and every single week after what was a crazy first month and a half-ish or so, where it just felt like everyone on their defense was hurt. Uchenna Nwosu came back this week, and again, they're just continually getting healthier and healthier and hot at the right time. This team is in pole position in the NFC West. They have the Rams right behind them, and the Rams are starting to cook as well. You can't afford to lose. You have to keep that Rams team at bay until the end of this season here. So we'll watch that, because the NFC is, again, one of those divisions right now, or one of those conferences, I should say, where if you're not a division winner and you're kind of in a really tough spot, because the NFC North is hogging up 3 playoff spots right now. So if you're not winning your division, you're potentially missing the playoffs, and that's a really unfortunate reality of the NFC right now. You basically have room for 1 wild card team, so you want to try and win your division if you're not in the NFC North. The Texans obviously did not play this week. We'll keep them where they are for now. We have some reservations about them, but we'll keep them where they are. The Chargers at 11. So no Ladd McConkey going into this game here. J.K. Dobbins, obviously, he is hurt. Justin Herbert even had to come out briefly in this game as well. I feel for the Chargers, because both times they got the Chiefs, they were missing key players in key situations, and or not key players in key situations, but just key players for the game. This time around, it was Ladd McConkey. It was J.K. Dobbins. The last time around, you had both your offensive tackles missing, and Herbert was playing on one leg. And again, Herbert gets hurt in this game as well for a bit. I really wish this Chargers team could catch the Chiefs on a healthy week, because I do think that they could take down the Chiefs. And they had the opportunity to, but unfortunately, there's not much you can do when the Chiefs are kicking game-winning field goals and banging it off the post and still making the field goal. It's what can you do at that point? The ball is tilting in their favor and bouncing their way. So I feel for the Chargers. They're still in a very good spot right now. I expect them to be a playoff team. The AFC West is a bit of a horse race right now for second place with them and the Broncos, but it's been a fun and entertaining division to watch, and I give the Chargers all the opportunity in the world to make the playoffs and be a team that can be a pain in some of the other teams' rear end, but they've got to get healthy. Hopefully Ladd McConkey's back. We'll see what happens with J.K. Dobbins, but I don't know. So hopefully hopefully this team can stay healthy, because it kills me that they caught the Chiefs twice, and both times they were just missing such important players to their offense, because I really think that's what hampered the team both times. Not to take anything away from the Chiefs defense, but that's how I feel about the Chargers right now, and they very well could be 9-4 if they had Ladd McConkey. I hate to make it sound like it's one player makes all the difference in the world, but I think Ladd McConkey in that game is probably the difference maker, and what helps helps the Chargers win the game, and that gives the Chiefs their second loss of the season. Broncos, Commanders, and Ravens all did not play. Nothing to talk about with them. They sit at 10, 9, and 8 respectively. And then the Packers round out the group at number 7 here, taking advantage of Detroit's mistakes, getting a bunch of points on the board, but overall the offensive production as a whole was not as great as the scoreboard would really reflect, just because, again, I mean, you had the Goff interception that set you up for a touchdown, turnover on downs at the 30-yard line, which was crazy to see the Lions going for, but that's just Dan Campbell for you. That ultimately set you up for a short field as well. Great that they took advantage, but Unfortunately, just some struggles offensively prevented you from putting up the points you needed. And on top of that, the Lions offense just is what it is. And even with the success you were having, slowing down the run game, slowing down is the key there, because you didn't necessarily stop it, but you at least slowed it down compared to what we're usually used to seeing from Detroit. They left too much time on the clock, and ultimately Detroit was able to put the football game away, even though you were able to score on 4 of your 5 drives in the second half. Just that first half, little too slow of a start, could not get things going. And once you started taking advantage, it got really interesting all the way to the very end, to the very final seconds of the game. But too much time on the clock for Detroit, and in the current state that offense is right now, you cannot afford to do that. Thankfully, though, Packers still a really good football team right now. Jordan Love has cleaned up the interception problem. He's playing really well. They've just got to be better through 4 quarters of football play, because this isn't the first time that we've seen the Packers kind of struggle in the first half, surge later in the half, or later in the second half. I go back to like the first Vikings game, or did they play the Vikings a second time yet? I don't know. It's been a long season. The first time though that they met with the Vikings, that second half was great for them. Slow first half, slowly crawled their way back into the game, nearly caught back up to Minnesota. It's not the first time we've seen the Packers do this, so they need to be consistent and play a clean 4 quarters, and a full 4 quarters at that. But I still really like their chances right now. They're looking pretty good. That's why I have them right on the outside looking in as far as Super Bowl contending teams are concerned. And then, of course, the very top, the cream of the crop, the best in the NFL. At number 6, we're looking at the 11-2 Vikings. The Steelers are at number 5, Chiefs at 4, Bills dropping to number 3 from number 2, the Eagles leapfrogging them up to the number 2 spot, and then the Lions, of course, sitting at number 1. The Vikings, I need to... Vikings fans are probably gonna... I'm gonna get it from the Vikings fans on this one here, and in a good way. Sam Darnold, I was wrong. I have been doubting Sam Darnold for the whole season. The entire season, basically. Even in some of the big spots where he's looked really good. This game has, and I started to feel it last week, this game basically has helped me turn the page and really start to believe in what Sam Darnold's doing over there. I know the Falcons are in kind of a tough way right now, but 350 yards, 5 touchdowns, and yeah, there were some big mistakes that led to some pretty wide open touchdown catches, don't get me wrong, but still, you don't do that by accident. Sam Darnold, the fact that the Viking, and I really can't believe I'm sitting here saying this right now, but here I am saying it. The fact that the Vikings have not even approached Sam Darnold, and I understand J.J. McCarthy, I really do, I get that, but the fact that the Vikings have not even approached Sam Darnold about a contract extension and keeping him around, this last month is really going to test the commitment that they have to J.J. McCarthy, and I hope that if it keeps going as well as it does, and if it keeps getting better, that the Vikings are not just willing to cut him loose and go with J.J. McCarthy because they think, maybe Kevin O'Connell thinks that he can just turn any quarterback he wants into, a guy for his offense and play on a rookie contract for the next 4 years or the next 3 years remaining on his deal since he's missed his whole rookie season with his injury. I understand McCarthy's a first-round pick. I do. But if Sam Darnold's going to keep playing like this and he has really turned the corner and we are seeing the top-end talent that he was drafted in the first round for all those years ago by the New York Jets, it would be a mistake to let Sam Darnold walk. He has made me a believer. I hope this doesn't burn me, but at this point, I'm having a really hard time denying him anymore. So there you go, Vikings fans. I see the vision. Better late than never, I guess. The Steelers sitting at 10-3 right above them here. The reason I have the Steelers above them, even with a slightly lesser record, is mainly because the balance of the Steelers is a little bit more appealing for me here. The run game over in Minnesota is fine, maybe even good some weeks, but I think I like Pittsburgh's willingness to just pound the rock regardless. And on top of that, this is one of those things where I'll take Russell Wilson's experience over Sam Darnold's, and he's been around for a while now, but Russell Wilson has played in bigger spots, so it's me splitting hairs, but that's kind of why I have the Steelers just edging them out right now. But the Vikings, if you want to say Vikings over Steelers in this situation here, I totally get it, and I'm not going to sit here and like die on a hill about it. That's just kind of where I am right now. But this Steelers team feels about as complete as Pittsburgh has felt since like prior to Ben Roethlisberger falling off physically. It's not perfect, but I do think that's a true statement to just where this Pittsburgh's team is right now, being able to throw the football, being able to run the football. The defense is about as good as it has been over the last like decade or so. It's very competitive, very aggressive, able to force mistakes and turnovers. Alex Highsmith is now back in the fold as well. And the big thing for me is that Russell Wilson, even if he's not having monster numbers every single week, he's leading this offense to 6 points rather than 3. And I think that is very important for the Steelers team going forward here. So I just think that the Steelers right now are the most well-rounded they've been in so long. So I really like where they stand at this current moment because I'm a very big fan of their defense. I really like Jaylen Warren and Najee Harris as a 1-2 punch. The O-line scares me a little bit just because of youth and inexperience. But overall, I don't really have a lot of things negative to say about Pittsburgh right now. They're one of those teams that it feels weird that they're 10-3, and they are where they are considering the road that they've taken to get here, but they feel as legit as they come right now. The Chiefs at number 4, 12-1. Great teams find ways to win. I know there is a very large group of people out there that says it's the Chiefs and the refs versus everybody else, and that's just, I try to avoid that conversation like the plague. I just don't like getting into the conversation of officiating. It just takes away from the actual game, and I just try not to focus in too much on it. But great teams do find ways to win football games, and the Chiefs are a great team, and unfortunately for a lot of people, they find ways to win football games, even if it is settling for a field goal late and it doinking off of the upright and still going in. That is my issue, though, with this Chiefs team and why I had them at number 1 for so long, but I kind of was starting to get fatigued by them a little bit and ultimately ended up dropping them out of that number 1 spot, and now I have them as low as number 4. The settling for 3 is going to come back to bite them eventually. And that was even a concern I had last year, and it ultimately ended up not being a problem because obviously they won back-to-back Super Bowls. But that will eventually get to you. And I'm excited to see people coming back. And if Marquise Brown really can come back and play soon, and he's good to go, like come playoff time. Let's say he gets back like the final week or 2 of the season, and really ramps up and gets really integrated into this offense come playoff time. Then things can get really scary, and we'll cross that bridge when we get there. But for this team to now have Isaiah Pacheco back, they went and got DeAndre Hopkins, who I know is a little bit older now. I would be expecting more from this Chiefs offense right now, and I kind of was. And so to see them now have to win back-to-back games, 19-17, where you basically lost or you won off of a blown play last week, and you damn near lost this game on the field goal. You're lucky it bounced in. I mean, this is one of those things where being realistic, that at some point the luck's going to run out, but you can't just keep settling for field goals. Thankfully, the defense continues to suffocate teams, and they have a great defensive coordinator in Spagnuolo over there. The defense is doing phenomenal work, but the offense needs to find a way into the end zone. They can't keep settling for 3 like they have over the last few weeks. They've got to punch it into the end zone. The Bills at number 3. Josh Allen, 6 total touchdowns, 3 rushing, 3 passing. I cannot for the life of me get over that QB sneak call. I'm mad. And this is what separates great coaches from like the other coaches of the NFL. In that situation, you cannot afford a failed running play. And I'm sure plenty of people have harped on this, and I'm finally getting to talk about it myself. You can't afford a failed running play in that situation. People that aren't even coaches in the NFL are aware of that. Like, myself included. Like, there is no situation where I am running the ball right there. And I don't think a lot of people are, especially a QB sneak. Like, I know you have Josh Allen, big man, prides himself on running people over, but the cost of that failed run loses you that football game, having to blow that timeout. When it comes to clock management and situational management, just as soon as I saw them line up for that sneak, nothing even had to be said from commentary. It's kind of, the feeling kind of sank into my gut, and I was like, oh man, if this doesn't work, this is going to cost them the game. And what happens? You never, it blew everything for you. Yeah, you scored, great, good on you, but Rams got the ball, you never saw it again. They played it perfectly to make sure that that punt was the last thing that was done in that football game. So, terrible play calling. Defense couldn't make stops. The blocked punt return for 6 obviously hurts as well. Oh, that QB sneak, man. I hate it. I hate it for Josh Allen, because to play the way he did and lose that football game, like, that is just, and then for him to sit there in the post-game press conference blaming himself too is the craziest thing out of all of that. The QB sneak is ridiculous, but for him to be humble enough to go out there and just say, "Oh, I've got to be better." Oh, sorry, I only scored on 7 of the offensive drives, or 6 of the offensive drives instead of 7. Sorry, I should have done better. Like, that's ridiculous. Like, the defense did not play well. Your head coach, terrible play calling. Like, there are a couple of things there that were not Josh Allen's fault. The Eagles at number 2 nearly fell for the trap game, but like I said with the Chiefs just a moment ago here, great teams find ways to win in situations where maybe they put themselves in a bad spot, and this Eagles team is one of those great teams. A lot of people are going in on Jalen Hurts right now and him not having to throw the football as much and whatnot, and like, even in this game, 14 of 21, 108 yards, 2 passing touchdowns, though, and a rushing touchdown. Nobody's talking about the 3 touchdowns scored. They're just like, oh, only 100 yards passing. What they're doing is working. This is one of the most physical football teams, both offensively and defensively, in the NFL right now, and I don't really know how people can sit here and tell them that they're doing it wrong. This is not like last year where they were 11-1 and losing the rest of the way. This is a team that has worked. They're on a 9-game winning streak right now since they were 2-2, and they're now sitting at 11-2. Like, granted, maybe the wheels could fall off this last 4 weeks, but I don't really see that happening right now, because the other thing that people seem to be forgetting is the defense was horrendous in the back half of that season last year. Like, horrendous. And I was worried about it at the beginning of season 2, because the first week or two, things did not look great defensively. But that is long in the past at this point here. From defense to what Saquon Barkley is doing right now, where he is already broken the franchise record for the Eagles, career best as well for him rushing. He is working his way towards 2,000 yards on the ground, and he's healthy, and I don't really see why he can't get there with the way that he's been playing and the way this offense is built to work. A lot of defenses in the NFL, and there are some weeks where maybe the Eagles do find themselves in some bad situations or maybe just struggling to move. A lot of the defenses in the NFL are not built to stop what they're doing offensively. There is a reason that tush-push continues to work, but there's also a reason that Saquon Barkley, very talented player, was plopped into this offense and has had the season he's had, because defenses are not necessarily well-equipped to stop what they're doing right now. I like what Philadelphia. I like what Philadelphia is doing right now. Say what you want about their inability to throw the football or just their lack of throwing. I think they're literally last in the NFL right now in passing attempts. What they're doing on the ground is working. They're still winning football games. It has literally been 2 months and some change since they last lost a football game. If that's how they're going to win football games, that's how they're going to win football games. Like, who am I to tell them that they're winning football games wrong? And that goes for a lot of other people as well. You can't just sit there and tell them they're winning football games wrong. It doesn't make sense. And then at number 1, the Detroit Lions, of course. Dan Campbell's a psycho. I do want to make that abundantly clear as far as my feelings go about him. Going for it on 4th down in that situation he did, with Jared Goff falling to a knee as he was handing off the ball. It could have ended in disaster for them, but it worked out. They won the game. kicked the field goal. Who am I to tell them once again they're winning football games incorrectly? That's just crazy. Again, talk about putting your balls just right on the table in front of everyone and telling them, here they are. Impressive stuff, to say the least. The Lions have not lost a football game since week 2 of the season. We are now going into week number 15, so it has been a very long time. And I still am baffled to this point that the Lions even lost to the Buccaneers the way they did. Was it 20-16 in that game? Like, that game was so crazy because that Buccaneers defense, the way we have seen that Buccaneers defense this season, should not have been able to beat them the way they did. The Lions, though, cream of the crop. Even if the running game was held down in comparison to what we're used to, Jared Goff continues to be money for the team here. They are just a 1-2 punch combination over there with the running backs. On top of that, you have so many talented receivers that you can work with as well. Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jamison Williams, Sam Laporta, the tight end. Like, it is an embarrassment of riches over there in Detroit at this current moment here. And we're seeing the Lions win football games right now. Like that Jared Goff handoff. Any other time frame prior to Dan Campbell, the Lions end up losing the football game because of that. From the moment Dan Campbell takes over forward is like a parallel universe of Detroit Lions football that we're living in right now. Because anything prior to that, if that same handoff happens, Jared Goff's knee hits the ground and he somehow fumbles the ball back to their own end zone and it's recovered for a touchdown and they end up losing. Like, that's the Detroit Lions luck. And now they have those situations popping up in games, but it's working out in their favor. Like, I look at that. I look at the 2 field goals from Jake Bates a few weeks ago that like skimmed the goalpost on both sides. Those are all things that prior to Dan Campbell, this Lions team is losing games because that ball's not skimming those goalposts. It's banging off the posts in both of those situations and missing. Jared Goff is just flat out eating dirt rather than being able to get that handoff there. It's crazy seeing what the Lions are doing right now, and I'm here for it. I'm having a blast watching it, and I know you Lions fans are, but it's been awesome to see them to this point. And I really, really hope we get to see them in the Super Bowl this year. I am rooting for the Lions in the NFC right now. But those are my rankings coming out of week number 14, going into 15. Let me know in the comment section down below your thoughts, your opinions. What am I getting right? What am I getting wrong? All that and then some. But fire away in that comment section. As always, if you made it to the end, greatly appreciate it. I'll see you all next time. Have a good one.